Hi friends, thank you so much for clicking this video. My name is Heather Chisina and you are welcome. So today I want to talk about my asthma diagnosis. I was diagnosed last year officially at the age of 34. So that is an adult diagnosis. So I thought of enough time has passed by for me to be able to talk about my story. So get a cup of tea and coffee and relax. What I've done is that I've broken up my story into chapters. So it's going to be a very unique storytelling. So if you want to bounce around, feel free to do that. But the reason why I'm doing it this way is I want to bring in some connections that will hopefully inspire you and also inspire people who do not have this diagnosis. So this is the kind of video that you would probably share to people who are probably not compassionate, or you feel as if maybe they just need to hear this story. So I hope you are ready and let's begin. I will begin with my background. So I have a background in patient advocacy, and the first population that I worked with are people who have epileptic seizures, and I really loved working with this population because I had a personal connection. My childhood friend had epileptic seizures. I grew up in Kenya, and one thing that she would always talk about is the lack of care or access to care in Kenya and medications. And she would always talk about the United States and how technologically advanced they are and all these medications that she would have accessed if she grew up in America. So she would always tell me about it, and that was her goal. She really wanted to go there. She had severe seizures, and it was so hard for us to watch as her friends, and also for her as well, because it really took a toll on her emotionally. So at the age of 13 years, she passed away, and she's never left my mind. I can literally see her face right now as I'm speaking to you. So being in America and helping this population, and being this is the first population that I'm working with in patient advocacy, I felt as if, wow, this is a full circle moment. And I really cherished my first days in advocacy because I was really passionate about it. So later I was moved to work with the team that works with individuals who have respiratory conditions. Some of them are genetic. And what I noticed is that, again, I just always found a way to connect with people. There was this population that I worked with that had a really rare genetic condition. And what I noticed about them is the fact that they were self-advocates. They knew everything about everything. And I found it fascinating, and I was like, wow, I really love this population. And again, it gave me the passion and the zeal to serve. So what I noticed is that, of course, there was lots of comorbidities associated with this group. So people had like asthma or bronchitis or COPD. So I remember spending hours looking at numerous medication schedules, and I became very familiar with the kind of medications like albuterol and all these things. So I knew all that stuff. I knew all the cutting edge clinical trials, all the approvals, and all these things that were going on. And I joined a team that would do advocacy on Capitol Hill for healthcare reform. So it was really exciting being in the forefront of doing all these things. I found it so exciting. Now, I did have a lovely colleague, an amazing colleague, and there's a connection as to why I'm saying this, so stick with me. So I had this amazing colleague that we worked with together, and we were the kind of people who would tag team because we just wanted to help every family. And if we had an urgent case that would come through the door and it was very complicated, we would just do a quick video call and say, hey, what are we gonna do? And we'll just tag team and ensure that every family is cared for and served. And I just remember how the parents were really grateful, and they just felt like, wow, thank you so much for partnering with us. And to me, it just was so fulfilling. But for us, we just served with all of our hearts, right? And it was amazing. It was so good, especially to have a colleague who we thought are like, we're both January babies. So the way we work and the way we do things, it was just the perfect match for us. Eventually, we ended up leaving that particular job. She went overseas to Europe, started a family there, and I remained here. Yes, so that's exactly what happened as far as my background. And then in the next section, I'll talk about my diagnosis. Now I'll go ahead and talk about the official diagnosis. So fall of 2021, I started having breathing difficulty. I didn't think anything of it because here in the DC area, they usually say that if you live here long enough, you will get allergies because of everything that goes on here. We have lots of trees and flowers. So I didn't think anything of it, but it was progressively getting worse. So one day out of the blue, I got a full-blown asthma attack. At that time, of course, I didn't know it was an asthma attack. I thought I was dying, and I literally felt as if I was drowning, and I was gasping for air, and I just felt like I couldn't catch a break. And I felt as if my life was flashing before my eyes. I've had that saying before. I've heard it so many times, but this was the first time that I actually was like, wow, all I could think about were my kids. And I was hysterical. I was crying. I was hysterical. So long story short, I was given the official diagnosis of asthma at the age of 34. And I remember when the doctor was writing the prescription, he said, okay, go and get albuterol from the pharmacy. And I paused. I've seen that literally on thousands of medication schedules over the years. So I was like, wow, I can't believe that the roles have been reversed. So sure enough, I did go to the pharmacy, but before that, the doctor made me aware that in the DC area, the air quality was really, really poor. And I'll put a screenshot that I took at that specific time that said that the DC area was affected by the wildfires in California. I didn't even know that, you know, the smoke and all the air quality would travel all the way here to the East Coast. But nonetheless, that's what happened. And I'm going to go ahead and put something on the screen for you to see. So that was good to note because that was essentially, from now what I know, kind of like an environmental trigger. And at that particular point, the asthma was really bad. I was huffing and puffing. Even going to the mailbox, it was hard. Even speaking over the phone, connecting with family back home, it was really difficult because of long distance calls. And a couple of times, I remember my family telling me, oh, you probably need to get off the phone because it seems like you're really struggling. So for me, it was really different because just the other day, I felt as if I was okay. And now this is my new normal. And everywhere I would go, instead of, before it was just phone, keys, and wallet, right? But now it's always, I have to go with my inhaler everywhere. And also my kiddos all the time would ask me, hey, do you have your inhaler? So it was just a really different time. It was really, really different. So at around this time, I also spoke to my mom. I called my mom and I told her, hey, this is what happened. This is my diagnosis. And everyone at home in my family was like, you're 34. How is this possible? We thought that this is a childhood diagnosis. Like, what happened? What did we miss? So I went back to speak to my mom, and we did some brainstorming, and it took us back to when I was 10 years old. Everyone in my family was really healthy, but I was the kind of kid who would see specialists because I had ear infections. I would have to go to the ENT specialist, and all these things used to happen. I was the one who would frequent the doctor's office. So at the age of 10, I started having breathing difficulty, and we went to the family doctor. This was in the 90s. They did chest x-rays and they said she's fine, and they dismissed us. And I was like, wow, I don't feel fine. But I guess at that time it was such a mild case that would come on and off, but it was enough to go under the radar, especially because in the 90s in Kenya, nobody had an asthma diagnosis. Nobody had an asthma diagnosis. At that time, it was really different back in the day. It was really different back in the day. So my mom said, hey, you remember we spent so many weeks going up and down, seeing all the specialists in Nairobi, and not everyone was dismissing us. And I vividly remember, because I was adamant, like, there's something going on. I can't breathe. Yes. So my mom concurred and said, hey, the doctor is probably right. This is something that probably went under the radar all these years, and this environmental trigger caused for it to resurface in a severe way. So for me, it was just good to note, and I actually considered purchasing an air purifier at that time because it was really bad. So as I was just coming to grips with my diagnosis, I contacted my friend. Remember, I told you about my friend we used to work with. She was expecting her second child in Europe. So I messaged her. There's a time difference, but I messaged her and I said, hey, how is it going? Have you given birth yet? And she said, Heather, I gave birth, but you will never believe what happened. I said, what happened? And she said, we did a sweat test, and we think it's this rare genetic condition that we worked with. And I was like, what? So in the back of my head, I'm thinking asthma, and in the back of her head, now she has a whole different diagnosis that's extremely rare. So I asked her, okay, so you've done the sweat test, and we were just going back and forth, and we're talking about clinical trials. This is in the pipeline, and it's as if we were just advocating for ourselves. It was just as if we went on work mode, and we're talking about this is in the pipeline. And I was also asking her, like, you never knew you were a carrier? Did you know your husband was a carrier? Does anyone in your family have any mutations? Like, we were just going full on advocacy. So she said, hey, Heather, I need to go, but by the end of the week, I will tell you what it's going to look like. But at this point, it's pointing towards this rare genetic condition, respiratory condition. So I said, okay. So by the end of the week, she messaged me and she said, Heather, it is this diagnosis. So at that time, we just really were positive about it. And I told her, hey, look, you are the best person to be able to deal with this. Who knew that all these seeds of helping other families and all this knowledge that you acquired with serving with your heart would be able to help you take care of this beautiful bundle of joy that you have? It's amazing. So yes, she was just really positive about it. And initially, of course, we were emotional just because how things just changed. The roles literally for both of us just changed in the snap of a finger. It just changed. So we started talking about what the diagnosis means long-term for her. What does the care look like in Europe? And it took us back to concerned parents who would call us and say, hey, child is going overseas and do this research about Europe. For us, we were like, we already know the research. We already know what it looks like there, because this is all the research and all the seeds that we planted. So it was just amazing. It was just amazing how things work. So that is the story about my diagnosis of asthma, and also my friend's child's diagnosis of a rare respiratory condition. I don't know what to say. It's just really deep, and at the same time it's emotional. So I'll just go ahead and talk about I'll go ahead and talk about the takeaways. I don't want to dwell too much on the diagnosis. I want to focus on the takeaways. So I'm back. I hope the diagnosis section made sense. It's such an emotional topic for my friend and I. So I hope it makes sense. So right now, as far as the takeaways, I have a couple of points that I wrote down. And as I said, I know these are two different stories as far as my asthma diagnosis and also my friend's daughter who has a really rare genetic respiratory condition. Two different stories, but it's just crazy the way now the roles are reversed. So I would start off by saying that if you're watching this and you don't understand someone's plight, because sometimes people can suffer from things that are seen or unseen. It might be a health diagnosis or a mental health diagnosis. But what I would say is, please be kind and compassionate. No one is expecting you to understand it. You definitely cannot understand what someone else is going through, how this diagnosis is affecting them emotionally, physically, or in all other aspects of their life, socially. So what I would say is, no one is expecting you to understand them, but what I would say is, please be kind, listen, and be compassionate. I'm from Kenya, and there is this Swahili proverb that says, Dunia ni duara, which means that the world is round. And often people use this analogy or this proverb when they say that, hey, you will eventually make connections. So when you meet with people, it's not by chance. Eventually there will be a meeting point. There is a reason as to why you are meeting this person or you are engaging with this person. And we usually use that to say, hey, the world is just round and you will end up meeting with people. So right now you might meet with someone who has, like for me, I met so many individuals who had asthma diagnosis, and I didn't understand that down the line I myself would have that asthma diagnosis, or for my friend. So it's just a call to be kind and compassionate. I don't think things happen by chance. I feel as if there's a reason for everything. I don't believe that things just happen just because. No. Yes. So what I said is, Dunia ni duara, the world is round, and at one time you will make connections, right? You may not understand someone's plight right now, but you may make that connection in the future. So for example, right now you might meet with someone who has a certain diagnosis or is going through a certain life change or life challenge, and then maybe your great-grandchild or your grandchild is going through the same thing. So just be kind and compassionate, because you don't know what's happening in the future, you know? I also said you can't understand everything under the sun, but be empathetic, kind, and listen. I'm so happy that I was able to serve with my full heart when I was a patient advocate. I feel as if I didn't leave any stone unturned. I did everything to the best of my ability. So I feel as if I'm guilt-free, because you can imagine if I was really doing a poor job and then this happened, I would be so guilty. Or even my friend would be so guilty, because she would be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening to me, you know? So again, please, I know I'm repeating myself, but guys, I cannot stress it enough. Being on the other side right now, I truly understand. Okay, I'm like, okay, I get you. Okay, and then lastly, as far as my diagnosis, I've realized that the triggers and the importance of nutrition and staying away from stress. In the beginning, it was really disruptive. I would say that it was really disruptive because there were even a couple of YouTube videos that I did at the time that I received the diagnosis, and I had to delete those videos because you could visibly see that I was really struggling to breathe. Yes, so that's it for now. I just hope that this has motivated you if you are someone who doesn't understand someone else's journey. Yes, and maybe in the future I can do another video, but I feel as if this is so necessary for now. So thank you so much for clicking this video and watching it. I don't take it for granted, and I will see you on the next one.